Today is episode 23 with Dr. B.
Welcome to the Harness Your ADHD Power podcast. If you're looking for a fresh perspective and actionable steps on hot topics from focus to follow through to self-management and more, you are in the right place. Welcome your host, innovative educator, coach, and psychotherapist, Dr. B.
Hey, dears. So glad that you could join me for today's podcast episode. We're going to start up a little different today. I've been hearing from more and more of you about how bad it's been to live so much of your life not knowing about your ADHD and what you could do to help yourself. And I've also been hearing from loved ones and friends of adults with ADHD who are telling me that they want to understand more about living with adult ADHD so that they can be supportive of those that they care about. So I felt the need to circle back around and talk about some important things like what happens if you've spent the better part of your life undiagnosed and living with the mystery saboteurs that have kept you underachieving, disorganized, depressed, and not understanding why the life that you've tried to envision for yourself isn't happening yet. What if most everyone in your life is totally misunderstanding you and your behaviors and what they mean, and thinking of you as lazy, flaky, untrustworthy, and so on? And what if having a translator or decoder would be helpful to you in terms of being understood by others as well as yourself, and could lead to better relationships all the way around, including with yourself? Well, that's what I'd like to go after today and see what I could do about eliminating some of the needless suffering and misunderstandings that's tearing relationships and families apart, as well as having you think of yourself in a less than favorable way, to put it mildly. Hearing so many adults with ADHD tell me they think of themselves as a loser, defective, worthless, and so on is heartbreaking to me. You are not alone in your pain or your potential. There are millions of adults all over the world with many of the same struggles that you're experiencing. So what, you might be thinking? I agree. Unless I can help you to get out of your pain and into your potential, then it's good to know that you're not alone. It really is. But what about your pain? I'll be getting there. Just stay with me. Some adults talk about their struggles openly, while others feel such shame that it's their best-kept secret. I want to share a powerful message with you that DTC shared with me years ago. It's their heartfelt perspective. The reason that we feel so stuck is because we live in a world that appears so rigid and feels so unforgiving, leaving one with the impression that there are no alternatives to functioning successfully, that our possibilities are limited, that there is only one way of doing things, and that way simply does not work for us. So all of our attempts at life feel hopeless. No one ever really tells us that there's flexibility in functioning, that there's more than one way to go about maneuvering through the world, ways that can work for us, ways in which we have the ability to succeed, just like everyone else, only differently. But no one knows that they have to tell anyone this because no one really realizes it. The non-ADD people are just functioning the way that they know how, and it's working. And the ADD people are functioning the way they know how, and it's not working. So until you flip the lid off of this mystery of life and uncover this world of differences, reveal the array of alternative paths, everyone remains positioned exactly where they have the ability to be. The functioning people remain ignorant, and a great many of us are left feeling inept, demoralized, and utterly stuck. You know, whether you identify with the message I just shared, or sympathize with it, or want to know what to do about it, I hope it touches you as deeply as it does me. Over the course of my 66 years now, I've experienced many different challenges, whether they've been physical health or mental health issues, and been driven to overcome them. Whether focus, follow-through, self-management, learning differences, environmental sensitivities, and others, I've needed to overcome them if I was going to live the life that was anything close to what I hoped for. And I also needed to overcome them if I was going to shed some light and guide others, perhaps like you, out of your stuckness and into the life that you've been wanting forever. My phrase for that journey is moving from stuck to unstoppable. So no matter your age and when these challenges came to light, or whether you're a professional who's trying to launch a business or a career, or a student trying to finish up your degree for years now, or a mom of a few kids who just can't seem to juggle kids and housework and a part-time job, or anyone else who just thoroughly is exhausted by what it takes to try and have a successful life. The cost of not knowing is very expensive, no matter what your age or your circumstances. And once you know, a different journey begins. One of grieving the losses or missed opportunities, and there can be many. Trying to find well-trained professionals to work with, it can be very challenging. Determining effective meds, if that's what you opt for, and figuring out what skills and strategies you're lacking and how you can learn them. And the skills and strategies part is true no matter whether or not medication is a part of your plan, because there's definitely no skills in pills. I know there are many online sources of testing and such to determine if you have adult ADHD. And even though the criteria for ADHD is a symptom list, it's so much more than that. There's a picture of someone's life that unfolds in a comprehensive history taking and assessment that is designed to rule in and rule out so many different things, not only ADHD. So please be careful with self-diagnosing. I'm learning that in many parts of the world, it is a very lengthy and time-consuming journey to even get such an appointment set up, let alone get this comprehensive assessment to rule in or rule out various conditions. However, if you just guess and miss something important, like an organic reason, a physical condition, or an injury reason, like a mild brain injury from head contact sports, as the basis for or the source of your symptoms, you could be doing yourself a huge disservice. Be certain, even if you have no intention of medication being part of your approach, knowing with certainty what your starting point is and what you're dealing with is worth everything. You need this information before you can take the appropriate steps to get you where you want to go. Otherwise, you could be doing things that just aren't the right steps for you and kind of wasting your precious time. Make sense? I hope so. I may have talked about this in another episode or on a live video, but head contact sports can cause injuries that show up as symptoms very similar to ADHD, yet the source of those symptoms is an injury, not ADHD. Transitioning. So what are the possibilities of a successful life with adult ADHD? Lots. Doctors, lawyers, CPAs, musicians, artists, entrepreneurs, writers, business owners, and so many more possibilities to consider. And since we're an interest-driven people, if we're really interested, we'll most likely find a way and go after it. Think about the things that you're really interested in and have a natural talent or knack for. Would you be interested in learning more about these things, getting really good at them, and then spending however much of your lifetime doing them? I hope so, if they're strengths of yours that you can learn to leverage for your success. It's much easier that way. That's what I've done. To give you a sense of my journey so far, so you might use it as a possible model for your own journey, my strengths led me to be of service. That's the big picture theme. And over the years, I felt called to make a positive, significant difference in the lives of millions of adults who are bright and creative and have focus and follow-through and self-management challenges and just aren't living up to their potential, and they want to, which is the drilled down theme. And I've continued to expand the ways that I serve for over 30 years now, which is the how. And since I, probably like you, like variety and changing things up to keep them fresh, addressing the needs of my brain configuration, I've continued to add new ways of serving over the years. I've been and I continue to be a psychotherapist, ADHD coach, a group facilitator in the community, a speaker, a writer, and then transitioning into the online space where I learned how to do live videos on Facebook, create little mini courses, and I created an innovative online program, Adventures in Achievement, that's a hybrid of coaching and membership with weekly live group coaching, live workshops, and a private support forum where I can work with members one-to-one to help them to stay accountable and keep moving forward as we clear away the obstacles as they arise. A pretty cool setup. And now, a podcast host as well. You can learn to find your own big picture theme, drill down for the details, and then expand out into whatever drives you. You can. And there's something else. It's not only the skills that you need to gain, but whatever pre-skills that you might be missing. You know, the easiest way I can explain my idea of pre-skill is learning to ride a two-wheeler bike. I see some sense of balance as a pre-skill to learning to ride a two-wheeler. I suppose you could develop balance while learning to ride the bike. However, I think it might be harder. So I'd focus on gaining a sense of balance first by other means, and there'd be many ways to do that, and then take my ability to balance into the task of learning to ride the two-wheeler bike. I think it would be much easier and much faster that way. Similarly, you want to organize your closet, but you don't have the pre-skills of decision-making. It would make it very difficult to organize your closet and possibly get rid of things if you can't make decisions. So much of what stops many adults that I've worked with over the years are what I call the pre-skills. Skills that you need to have before you can do the original thing that you want to do. Lots of the how-to books assume that you have these pre-skills. And so when you try to do exactly what it is that they instruct you to do, and you don't have the necessary pre-skills and can't succeed, you might blame yourself for your lack of success rather than the missing information. Please know that there's real hope for success for you and freedom from the many stuck places that have taken your life hostage. And as I've said so many times before, I'm a work in progress just like you. I still have things to figure out so that I can keep moving forward. It's just part of the adventure of life. The difference now is that I don't blame myself or circumstances or anything. I get solutions-oriented in my thinking, and I start figuring out how I'm going to get something done, not give in to the thoughts that there's no way that it can happen. That's just my mind telling me a lie. I'm creative and I can come up with something that's going to work. Might not be easy, might not be what I'd like the most, but I can come up with a solution. And I know that I might make it sound as if it's so easy to just come up with a solution and keep moving forward, when it isn't easy for you, yet. Well, I've had years and years of practice with the systems and structures that I've created and I use, so things don't stay stuck for very long. Remember, I wasn't born knowing about the systems and structures I needed to have in place to move myself from stuck to unstoppable, and neither were you. So as long as you're teachable and willing to be a student of your own life, you can learn just like I did. And if you need more help than my live videos or my podcast can provide, there's always the option of working with me in the innovative online program. There's a wait list for now, and new enrollments are going to open up next month. So hop on the wait list if you have any interest in knowing more about what this innovative program could do for you. We're getting closer to today's 3 important points with relevant stories, an action step, and a favorite quote of mine. So let's keep going. In case you go feeling defeated or hopeless here because you know what your life's been like and what makes me think that it can be any different, well, let me tell you. There's this phrase in recovery circles, terminally unique, that fits here. The term is used to describe the feeling that one feels so alone in their situation that they believe that no one else could possibly understand. Listen, it's true that adults with ADHD are unique in how their ADHD is expressed through them. However, there are common and similar experiences that we all have had and we all can relate to. Fear has this weird way of trying to convince us that we're so unique that we're beyond help, that no one and nothing can make things better for us. I remember feeling terminally unique when I first started on my recovery journey, and I was told that over time I would come to believe that change was possible for me in the ways that I was seeking because I would actually be living a different life. They were right. I believe the same can be true for you. One of the reasons I created the little 6-question survey asking you about your number one greatest struggle or frustration is that I want to talk about solutions for your struggles. And for me to do that, I need to know what they are. I know what my struggles were with ADHD, and I know what those I work with struggle with, and I want to know what you all struggle with too, so I can make a bigger contribution. If you want to share your number one greatest struggle or frustration with me, be sure to take the quick little survey. The link is on my website in the podcast section. And I look forward to hearing from you and being of greater service. Once you discover what the keys to a successful life are for you, you'll be glad that you were willing and open-minded. And while you're getting to those keys, I suggest that you take advantage of your naturally curious nature to full-on be a student of your own life and to learn as much as you can about your challenges, what triggers them, makes them better, makes them worse, and where they don't even show up. Yes, where they don't even show up when you're leveraging your strengths. Please be patient, since these challenges didn't just show up yesterday. And be sure to reward and encourage yourself with every little step that you take on this journey, because you feel bad enough about the state of your life and yourself as it is. You don't need to dump a bunch of judgment and negativity on yourself to boot. Kick that bad attitude to the side of the road and remember, focus on your wins. I want you to remember that you are not what you do or don't do. You're more than that. We are not defective or less than as people, as human beings. We're just wired differently. And the difference is actually pretty cool once you have a different perspective and the tools that you need for your own success. In this case, it's whatever you're going to need to start succeeding and keep succeeding and feel good about doing so. Otherwise, why bother? How much time do we have? Not much. So let's get to it. In this episode, I'm going to be taking a look at why not knowing about your ADHD can lead you to make very damaging meanings out of your life events and have you feeling like a horrible person, and what you can do about it to turn it around and claim a more successful life for yourself. And knowing is only the first step. The next step is taking action on what you know so you can start getting new results. Fine-tune your process as you go along and get better and better results. It's a process, so please don't let yourself off the hook here with taking action once, not getting the results that you hope for, and stopping there. Seriously? Did you learn to speak fluently or dress yourself nicely with just one attempt? I know that I didn't, so keep going. You're learning to do, not just standing up and do, like you've been knowing how to do it your whole life. Get real here. Today's 3 important points are not knowing the source of your challenges and giving them wrong meanings to everything can be damaging to your self-esteem. Being seen as someone that you're not, while the real you is hidden, can seriously hurt your relationships. And how the right interpretation can make a world of difference.
This podcast is sponsored by Pure Potential with Dr. B. You can head over to drbarbaracohen.com and find the podcast show notes, grade free content from Dr. B, plus programs and services. That's drbarbaracohen.com.
Now back to being an adult with ADHD in today's world. It's almost story time, but first, you need a win. You need to remember and acknowledge and celebrate at least one thing that's good about you or has gone right for you today. Just one thing. Perhaps you've given yourself some downtime. That's a win. Or maybe you started eating healthier for you. That's a win. Or maybe you've started to become a student of your own life. That's a great win. Or perhaps you've decided to focus on improving one small thing about yourself. That's definitely a win. Whatever you choose, it's up to you. However, I want you to choose something right now and celebrate it, either aloud or to yourself. I want you to have a win and acknowledge that at least one thing has gone right in your day, is right about you, even if you're feeling so bad about yourself because your ADD has taken your life to an all-time low and you just don't feel like you can try and turn it around yet another time, only to slide back to the way that it's always been up to now. Those facts don't take away from the fact that at least one thing has gone right today or is right with you. You are a precious child of the universe, and you're called a human being, not a human doing, for good reason. You don't have to earn your value. You were born with it. Your value comes from who you are, not what you do. Got it? I hope so, because you're going to keep hearing me say it over and over again, because it is so important to your self-esteem and your quality of life. You know, there's a lot of different reasons why you might not have known the reason for your focus and follow-through and self-management challenges and been suffering for most of your lifetime, even if you've been seeking help. And I'm going to share 3 stories with you today, as well as talk about your responsibility in this. That's right. Responsibility, or your ability to respond, since you're not off the hook here. And I hope that at least one of these stories is going to resonate with you and be of benefit. So let's keep going. Shifting gears to our first story. Leslie was 46 when she was finally diagnosed. She had been to mental health professionals for most of her adult life, seeking answers and solutions for her problems with focus and follow-through and self-management, and never received any until her recent diagnosis. There are various reasons why so many professionals didn't see her obvious problems and address them prior to the one that did. Mostly it's lack of education and training, even as a licensed mental health professional. Leslie could focus just fine when she was focusing on something that she wanted to focus on. She could follow through just fine when it was something she really enjoyed, like meeting her friends at the gym for a workout 3 times a week and then some social time. She could manage her sleep and other self-care tasks when she scheduled a really fun activity, like going on a road trip where she needed to get to sleep earlier and get up earlier so she could get going. It was just baffling to her that she couldn't do these same things when she needed to do it for her job or her family life or other important things for herself. She kind of had the life that she had envisioned for herself, but it was so difficult to keep up with. She really wanted to do well at work, yet as hard as she worked, she never really seemed to get all of her work done, and she kept making little mistakes. She'd been written up a few times because of this, and it was embarrassing to her. She knew that she was smart. She'd made decent enough grades all through school and university. However, even in school, it was so difficult to keep up with the work. She would miss a few key pieces of information for an assignment and then leave out an important part of that assignment. She didn't know that she was checking out all day long in school and missing so much of what was said. She just knew that she continually struggled to keep up, and trying to do schoolwork at home was near impossible. Leslie had worried for years that she was a terrible mother to her 3 kids, that she was constantly breaking her word to them, not keeping promises about the simplest of things, and seeing the look of disappointment on her kids' faces time and time again. How could she expect her kids to grow up and become the responsible adults that they would need to become if she couldn't model that for them? What kind of inept mother did they have? She couldn't see all the good things that she was actually doing for her kids and that they adored her for. And for the times that she disappointed them, sure, they were disappointed. What kid wouldn't be? However, that didn't take away from all the good stuff that she was doing. It's just that Leslie couldn't see all that good stuff. She only focused on what an inept mom that she was. And now that she had her diagnosis of adult ADHD, she just didn't know what to do with that information. She was experiencing so many different emotions. She was angry at all the mental health professionals that she had gone to for most of her adult life who hadn't diagnosed her sooner. What was wrong with them, she thought? She was upset with her teachers, both pre-college years and during college. She had certainly gone to them a number of times to ask questions and have them explain concepts to her outside of class. Even that way, she still struggled to understand all of what it was they were telling her. Why didn't they say something, even suggest something like getting an assessment at the university? But alas, they didn't. And her employer, didn't they have other employees who had ADHD or other challenges that made doing their job more difficult? Could she possibly be the only one in the company with these challenges? She found that hard to believe and wondered why the human resources people didn't ask her questions and make recommendations rather than just write her up for what she wasn't doing. Some background facts. There are over 8 million adults in the U.S. alone that are said to have ADHD, and I think that number is low. As of July 2017, the world population is 7.5 billion. If the conservative estimate of 2.5% of the adult population having ADHD is correct, then we're talking about roughly 19 million adults, if my math is correct. So much needs changing to make sure that people don't slip through the cracks and miss being seen with the challenges that they're experiencing day to day. Certainly, the earlier that people are noticed, the better. And more programs are being created for kids and teens to meet those needs. The needs that I'm focused on meeting are those who were missed earlier in life and are living with the consequences of unnoticed, undiagnosed, and untreated adult ADHD. Adults, younger and older, have so many questions about ADHD and how to navigate the many challenges of life as an adult with ADHD so that they can live up to their potential and feel happy and successful in their life. It's my hope that this podcast show will fill part of the knowledge and skill gaps worldwide and eliminate some of the suffering of roughly 19 million adults. What a blessing that would be for all of us. So what can you do if you relate to Leslie's story? Well, we have 2 more stories before I get to some action steps. They're coming. Transitioning to our next story. Reggie was a typical ADDer. He thought he needed to learn how to communicate better so that people would stop misunderstanding him and his actions or lack of them. That sounds like the right approach, but wait a minute. What if the information you communicate isn't well received by others because it just doesn't make sense to them or they don't believe you? Then what? That's more of what Reggie was up against instead of how he was communicating. He knew that when he didn't get something finished on time, it wasn't because he didn't care or he was a flake. It was usually because he was terrible at estimating how long things would take him. But since others didn't know that, or if they did, they didn't believe him or just didn't care, he ended up looking like a flake. And when Reggie hadn't started a simple task well into the final moments of it being due, others just rolled their eyes and said, "That's Reggie." He knew what they were saying with their tone and their rolling eyes, yet until the adrenaline kicked in and his mind came into laser focus, he just wasn't able to jumpstart himself. He wished he knew how, because he knew the feeling that it took to get started, and he just couldn't get that feeling until he had it. Clearly, this was a challenge of self-management that Reggie would need to become a student of his own life so he could offer input about when he was motivated and could jumpstart himself without the adrenaline rush kicking in. Some background facts. Reggie, like so many other adults with ADHD that I talk to, just wish that people would believe them and not say hurtful things like, "You've got to be kidding," or "That makes no sense at all." It's hard enough living with adult ADHD and trying to make sense of it for yourself, let alone try to have it make sense to those who aren't living with it. The variables are so vast that it could sound like you're making it up when you aren't. Adult ADHD is a complex condition that takes the 3 Ps: patience, persistence, and practice, so you can master your expression of adult ADHD. And once you do, moving from stuck to unstoppable is where you can go. So what do you do if you relate to Reggie's story? Well, we have one more story before I get to some action steps. They're coming. Transitioning to our next story. Pat and Patsy were twins in their early 20s, both living with ADHD, and they had recently gotten an apartment together. You might think that with twins, you couldn't get any more similar in the manifestation of adult ADHD, and yet that just wasn't true. Pat was mostly inattentive, where Patsy was totally hyperactive and impulsive. She seemed to talk nonstop about the most interesting things that she was interested in, and she wanted to share with Pat. Pat had so much trouble paying attention to Patsy and tracking what she was talking about. Just too much information for him to focus on. It was like he was being hit with a tidal wave of words and didn't know how to manage them. So he checked out. If Patsy could only have used a few words and cut to the chase, so to speak, Pat might have been able to stay with her in her conversations, but alas, she was quite the chatterbox. Patsy was continually frustrated with Pat because she told him that he never listened to her. Even when he told her that he really tried to listen to her, but he couldn't because of the amount of words, she just didn't get it. She told him that all the details were really important to what she was sharing with him, and she couldn't leave anything out. Pat spent a lot of his time daydreaming about all the things that he wished that he could do or have, but figured that he never would because life was just so difficult for him. Growing up, he'd become a vivid daydreamer, and he counted on his fantasy life to meet some of his needs that would never get met in real life. He stopped trying long ago because the sense of failure was just too much to bear. Pat's mind was well practiced at leaping from point A to B to C, but the problem was there were no real-life steps for him to take in his fantasies, just mental leaps to arrive. Plus, his rate of failure was 0 when he just lived in his fantasies, or so he thought. He didn't really realize the cost of failing to thrive in real life. Both Patsy and Pat were beginning to dislike living together and feeling sad about what was happening to both of them. They decided that they had to be proactive and do something before they started to hate each other and themselves. Some background facts. In order to be understood, you have to communicate in the language of the person who's listening. Pat and Patsy knew that they would have to carefully select the person that was going to help them because they were just so different. They both needed to be understood as well as to understand the other. And they needed to find someone that could understand them both and decode or translate what they were saying to one another so that communication could take place. If only someone could do that for them and then teach him or her how to do it, that would help a lot. They found someone up to the task. Once Patsy could understand what was actually happening to Pat physiologically when she gave him too many words at once, she was curious about how many words he could handle at once. He thought about it and he told her. She smiled and said that she would work on using only that amount of words or less to say what she wanted to share with him. Or if she just couldn't do that, she would tell him that it would be a 2-part conversation and tell him the first part, then take a break, and then tell him the second part. Patsy felt good about what she had learned, but she was still concerned about Pat living so much of his life in his fantasies. After a little probing, they learned that Pat didn't have the ability to see the details or steps of the path like Patsy did. It's as if his mind was blind to those details, which is why he always thought in big concepts, but could never do anything with them to make them real in his life. After some exploration, they found a few things that Pat could see the details about. Again, very interest-driven. He loved little model race cars and had built more than 200 of them. He could see the big picture of what they would look like when they were finished, and he could follow along step by step with each of the little pieces that he needed to put in place to complete the race car. This wasn't difficult for him to do. By understanding how he was able to see the steps and the path to build the little cars, Pat was able to learn how to see the path to some of his dreams. He started very small, just like his race cars, and had a success. That boosted his confidence that he could have a second success if he just did what he did the first time, just like with his little cars. After a while, Pat had a whole collection of little successes to his credit. Some action steps. It's your responsibility to get the information and training that you need. In other words, your ability to respond to your needs and to meet them. And the good news about learning the truth about where you are in your life right now and what's actually going on is it can help you to move forward with greater certainty no matter what age you are, if you're willing to be a student of your own life and open-minded about what you learn. Finding out the truth about your life situation is about rigorous honesty. From that rigorous honesty and truth, you learn acceptance. From acceptance, you learn that you aren't settling. Rather, you're learning to accept what is true and work with that truth instead of operating from denial. You're learning to respect yourself enough to do things for yourself instead of bailing. And respecting yourself is about knowing who you truly are. Knowing who you truly are is about being able to separate out the difference between being a human being and a human doing, and valuing yourself for being, not doing. If you relate to Leslie's story, your action step has 3 parts. Focus on getting answers to your challenges as soon as possible. Even if you don't know the questions to ask, tell someone you trust what you're experiencing and ask for help. Follow through and find out what you can do about the challenges that you're experiencing rather than just living with them and suffering. And self-management of your grief, anger, or any other emotions that are up for you. There are losses to grieve and moving on. Anger to acknowledge that it shouldn't have happened that way, but it did nonetheless. Don't let your emotions take you hostage. If you relate to Reggie's story, your action step has 3 parts. Focus on understanding the true meaning of your behaviors for yourself first, and then being able to share with others. Follow through. Once you know, you can ready yourself for mind shift changes and making different meanings. Self-management. Be sure to pace yourself and manage whatever feelings arise about all the times that you've heard that you were lazy or flaky or just not trustworthy. It may have looked that way, and you know the truth, so forgive the ignorance of others. If you relate to Pat and Patsy's story, your action step has 3 parts. Focus on what's just not working and get into action. Follow through on finding the right person who speaks your language and will understand how to tell you and others about you. Self-management. This can feel like such a relief and releases a flood of emotions that you are finally seen and understood for who you truly are. Practice gratitude. Remember, your needs matter to me. If I'm going to help make a real difference in your lives, I need to hear from you, and I need to know what your challenges are, what you're struggling with. And to help me know, I created the quick little survey where you can tell me what the number one biggest struggle or frustration is that you're having right now, and a little bit about it. And it's only 6 quick questions. You can be as brief as you want. The link to the survey is in the podcast description, the show notes, and is in today's post on my website. I hope you can take a few minutes to respond to the survey. Thanks in advance for your participation and for helping me to help you even more. A favorite quote of mine. Thich Nhat Hanh said, "To be beautiful means to be yourself. You don't need to be accepted by others. You need to accept yourself." The question I have for you at this point of our journey together is, what is one thing that you can and will accept about yourself today, right now, that will lighten the load of negativity or suffering that you've been carrying for a very long time? Be sure to do that today. It's important. I want to shift our focus here for a moment. If you're not in a moving vehicle and you're somewhere where it's safe to do so, perhaps close your eyes and just imagine for a moment living in a world where 1 in 20 adults live with ADHD, and that's a good thing. Imagine that ADHD is something that you could leverage and use to your advantage. Imagine the freedom that comes with the absence or the significant reduction of the stigma that's attached to being an adult with ADHD. Imagine a community of like-minded adults, 8 or 10 million strong, and growing every day. Imagine that ADHD is a difference, not a disorder. Imagine that what you need is the correct understanding, an operator's manual, and the tools to function at full capacity and express your full potential. Imagine all adults with ADHD moving forward to their success. Imagine this world is coming soon, that help is on its way. Imagine you just entered that world. Welcome to the world of Dr. B. Whether you're learning from my podcast episodes or live videos or working with me directly, you are in my world, and I'm here to serve your needs. So be sure to reach out and get your needs met. It's up to you to take action here so things can change for you. The 2 action steps to get your needs met are: ask Dr. B and get your questions answered directly on a podcast episode. Answer the quick little 6-question survey so I know what your number one struggle or frustration is right now. You'll find the links for both action steps on my website. Do it for yourself today. I appreciate you showing up to listen today and in the future. I have some special episodes in the works for you. They'll be coming soon. For now, the new episodes are released on Mondays and Thursdays. And as a subscriber, the newest episode will be in your feed by 1 a.m. Pacific time. Plus, you won't miss out on any of the extra special episodes that I create with guests, as well as some of the other different types of episodes. Certainly a good reason to subscribe. Perhaps make a date with yourself to listen to each of the podcast episodes so you hear your questions answered if you asked any for the Dr. B format, or just enjoy all the episodes where I'll be talking about such compelling topics as making friends, seeing the path, making a plan, and more in-depth separate episodes as a spin-off from episode 13's multi-level topic. So, if you enjoyed today's episode or any of the other episodes, please share this podcast show with your friends and family, as well as rate the show. If you'd like to do a little more, Write a thoughtful review on iTunes so I know that I'm meeting your needs. It doesn't have to be anything lengthy, just a line or two about how the podcast is helping you, if it is. I love hearing from you and learning how the podcast show is benefiting you and those that you care about. It means a lot to me to know that your life is getting a little bit better every time we get together. And if you want to participate in my quick little survey, ask me a question, receive periodic updates on new happenings with Dr. B, or just download your show notes, you can do all of that on my website, as well as learn about other services and resources. That is, if that's of interest to you. Thanks for listening. Until the next time, bye for now.
Thanks for your undivided attention. If you're hungry to make positive changes in your life, head over to drbarbaracohen.com and see how Dr. B can help you today. Whether you love making changes with one-to-one attention and community support, or on your own with self-study, or could benefit from coaching or psychotherapy, you'll find all the information right there at drbarbaracohen.com.